Arthur was once a ruthless ruler who dominated the world through sheer might. His rise to power was built on destruction. He wiped out his enemies, burned cities to the ground with nuclear fire, and committed countless atrocities in his hunger for control. But one day, the weight of his sins finally caught up to him. Overcome with guilt, he fell victim to a strange illness that slowly dragged him toward death. As darkness closed in, a mysterious voice echoed through the void, offering him a second chance and warning him not to squander it. Moments later, Arthur opened his eyes to find two unfamiliar faces peering down at him. The man was Reynold, and the woman beside him, Alice, his parents. Though the couple didn't expect their newborn to understand a word, they were filled with pure joy as they welcomed him into the world. Gradually, Arthur realized the truth. He had been reborn. The notion that the once mighty king now inhabited the body of a helpless infant was hard to grasp. Still, he couldn't help but notice the warmth and care radiating from his new parents. For the most part, he was content, except for the humiliating parts of babyhood. His oversized head, inability to speak, and lack of control over his own body reminded him how far he'd fallen from the throne. Then one day, something remarkable caught his attention. He watched as his father focused energy into his fists and shot the massive blade with a single strike. Arthur was stunned. This was a power he'd never witnessed before, not even in his world. Reynold, feeling proud of his display, turned to his family expecting admiration, only to have a loose rock tumble down and hit him square on the head. Alice, already expecting such recklessness, rushed over and healed the injury using magic while scolding him for showing off. Despite his clumsy side, Reynold was no joke when serious. On hunts, he could bring down a wild boar with one hit, making him a valuable companion to anyone who fought beside him. From these moments, Arthur learned two critical things about this new world. It was perilous enough that people needed weapons for everyday survival, and if he wanted to live freely here, he'd have to become strong himself. When Reynold returned home from hunting, Alice announced it was time for Arthur's nap. Normally, he'd be irritated by being treated like a baby, but sleep was one thing he didn't mind. In his previous life, rest was a luxury. Assassins had always lurked in the shadows, waiting for him to drop his guard. Though he was powerful enough to handle them, the constant paranoia had been exhausting. Months passed, and Arthur's small body finally grew strong enough for him to crawl and move on his own. His parents found it adorable when he stared curiously at his reflection in a mirror, unaware that inside, he was struggling to accept the reality of being reborn. Once he could move freely, Arthur wasted no time testing his new limits. One afternoon, after Alice tucked him in for his nap and stepped out, he opened his eyes, tossed his blanket aside, and carefully climbed out of the crib. As his mother busied herself washing dishes, the once great king began his slow crawl across the floor, ready to take his first step toward reclaiming control over his destiny. Quietly and carefully, Arthur crawls across the floor, making it all the way to the other side of the room without his mother noticing. She must be really absorbed in those dishes. Once he reaches his goal, he pushes open the door to the family's small library and drags out a book. If he's going to survive in this world, he needs to understand it first. Flipping through the pages, he learns that this continent is called Decathan, divided into three main kingdoms: the Darv Kingdom, a subterranean realm of dwarves, the Alakrea Kingdom, home to elves hidden deep within the forests, and the Sapin Kingdom, where humans rule under a monarchy. Unlike the world Arthur once dominated, no one here has resorted to weapons of mass destruction to gain power. Still, he's eager to keep reading, hoping to uncover more. The next book he opens finally answers the question burning in his mind: why this world feels so primitive compared to his own. The answer lies in magic. In this world, people can channel mana, an energy flowing within their bodies, to perform extraordinary feats. Not everyone is born with this ability, but for those who are, magic influences nearly every part of daily life. There are two main ways people wield mana: augmentation and conjuring. Augmenters circulate mana through their bodies, gaining superhuman strength, defense, and agility. Conjurers, on the other hand, release mana outward to manipulate the world around them, creating fire, shaping wind, or bending water to their will. Arthur takes note that the book mentions nothing about the healing magic his mother used earlier, which leads him to believe that she might be one of the rare few capable of such power. From what he gathers, most people's mana doesn't awaken until puberty. Once it does, they learn to control it through a mana core, eventually becoming trained mages. To Arthur, this all feels familiar. In his previous life, he mastered Kai energy, a natural force that worked almost the same way as mana. Closing his eyes, he focuses every bit of energy within him. And, just as he hoped, a faint mana core begins to form. It's his first real step forward in this new life. Before he can continue experimenting, his mother bursts into the room, panic written all over her face. She's been frantic since realizing he wasn't in his crib. Relieved to find him unharmed, she scoops him up in her arms. Arthur tenses, worried she might sense the mana inside him. But her concern turns out to be much simpler. He's made another mess in his diaper. Time passes quickly, and 2 years later, Alice writes in her journal, grateful that her son is growing strong and healthy. But something still troubles her. Arthur has never once smiled since the day he was born. Looking out the window, she spots Reynolds in the yard, showing their toddler some basic sword movements. Arthur seems genuinely focused, but Alice is horrified to see her husband giving a 2-year-old something even remotely resembling a weapon. Arthur, of course, already knows how terrifying his mother can be when she's angry. He makes a mental note to stay out of trouble if he wants to avoid another scolding. To calm her nerves, Alice decides to take him out for the day, to show him the town, and maybe, just maybe, coax out his first real smile. Arthur could hardly contain his excitement about going out with his mother. It wasn't just a casual stroll for him. This was an opportunity to gather valuable knowledge about the world he now lived in. As they moved through the bustling streets, he carefully observed everything around him. By examining the weapons being sold to ordinary citizens, he could already tell how advanced this nation's technology was. He even spotted materials and metals he had never encountered before. But the highlight of the trip came when he witnessed a mage conjure flames with a flick of his hand. The sight of magic in action right before his eyes thrilled him. For Arthur, today's adventure had been nothing short of extraordinary. By the time they returned home, his tiny body was completely worn out. Sleep tugged at his eyelids, and Alice gently cradled him, eager to put him down for a nap. Despite the limitations of this new life, Arthur had grown to appreciate its peace. In his past life, he'd been thrown into the world alone, an orphan who grew up without love or warmth. But now, he had parents who cared for him deeply, and that simple affection was something he had never known before. As he drifted off to sleep on Alice's shoulder, she whispered softly to him. She told him how proud she was, how she had noticed the way he'd sneak out of bed to read, and the one in his eyes whenever he discovered something new. She could already tell that her son had a curious, adventurous spirit, much like his father. And even though she secretly wished he'd grow up to live a calm, quiet life, she promised herself she would support him no matter what path he chose, as long as it made him happy. The following day, Arthur stood by the window, watching his father train in the yard. He was eager to study magic up close again. Reynolds began circulating mana through his body, and bits of rock lifted from the ground, hovering around him. He grinned proudly, as if showing off a grand display, but to Arthur, it looked rather unimpressive. Still, he quickly realized why. His father's talent wasn't in conjuring, but in augmentation, using mana internally to enhance his physical power. Watching Reynolds reminded Arthur how much he wanted to train too. He was about to climb down from the table to start when Alice appeared, announcing that it was nap time. Arthur couldn't talk yet, but that didn't stop him from trying to protest. As they passed the bookshelf, he began whining and reaching for his books. Alice sighed and told him there'd be no reading today. It was time to rest. Normally, that would have been the end of it. But Arthur had recently discovered a new ability, one far stronger than any spell, the baby pout. With his big, teary eyes and quivering lips, he unleashed the full force of his cuteness. Alice tried to resist, but eventually gave in, letting him keep a book to read quietly. Once she left, Arthur sat alone and began training again. Over the last 2 years, he had become surprisingly adept at controlling mana, By gathering energy from throughout his body, he had managed to form a mana core, a feat most people couldn't achieve until adolescence. It had taken countless attempts and left him utterly drained, but it was worth every bit of effort. Today, he felt ready. He focused his energy, determined to cast his very first spell. But he miscalculated. Terribly. The mana inside him surged out of control, and before he could stop it, a massive explosion tore through the entire house. Outside, Reynold and Alice were thrown to the ground by the blast. Reynold's back was scorched, but they were alive, and their first thought was Arthur. Panic flooded them as they rushed inside, praying their son had somehow survived. When Reynold reached the ruined library, he froze in disbelief. Arthur stood there, unharmed amidst the rubble. Not only had he survived, but it was clear he was the cause of the explosion. At just 3 years old, he had accomplished something most mages couldn't do until well into their teens. Arthur looked at his parents, chest puffed with pride, until the sound of cracking wood reminded him that the house was collapsing. 2 heavy beams came crashing down toward him, and with his tiny legs, he had no chance to escape. But before disaster could strike, Alice threw herself over him, shielding his body with hers, while Reynold used his magic to halt the falling debris. For a moment, Arthur just stared at them, stunned. In his past life, no one had ever risked their life for him. Yet here they were, his parents, willing to face death just to protect him. Overwhelmed, Alice broke down in tears, clutching him tightly. And as her tears fell on his face, Arthur began crying too, realizing for the first time what it truly felt like to be loved.